So after the live, this is what we have. It's all glued down now. We use the same glue we used on the trim, the Tight Bond, quick and thick. Just making sure that it's all set down really nice. And what I've been doing is, because I ended up putting it back into the mold, I had a little tool, here we go. Because I knew I could press out some of the details that were bothering me in my live. So I just put it right back into the mold. I added a little bit more clay, just so I didn't have those broken parts. But then it kind of stuck at the neck, so I mean, it's not going to be anything we're going to notice, but it looks really nice. And I just take, because I added more, I wasn't being really careful about the trimming, so I'm just cutting off the excess because, you know, again, I added more clay, but I didn't go around and shave it with the putty knife very well. So that's on. These are set up. We're gonna pop these out, okay? This had the resin in it. And we're gonna pop out our letters. Now they're still kind of pliable. Okay, so we have L. We have O. Actually, O isn't as pliable as the L. Probably because L is less resin in it, so it's set up slower because it needs heat to set up. And then the E. We're going to paint those in like a pink, I think. So it'll be like the lone bit of color on here. And then these we're going to save. We're going to save these. So like, because I was pouring and it was live and I didn't want to take my time, we have a bit of a mess, but we can sand off the edges of these. We could get the Dremel. We could use a little X-Acto knife to just get rid of those little, you know, edges that didn't go down super nice. Right. So that we'll do later. And I want to paint this before we set it down, just so it's not a pain, especially since I have the raised edge. Try to get a paintbrush in there and everything. This I'm going to leave white, but I'm going to hit it with the Modern Masters. Let me show you. The Modern Masters Oyster Semi-Opaque is what I have. I'd like to see if they make it in opaque. This is just what I have, and I love whenever I'm working with whites now, unless it's shabby chic, you know, like I'm really drawn to this. And I can't wait to get through this, and I'm going to try the Dixie Belle, the pearlescent, in the metallic, Moonshine Metallics. So that'll be about the same. Let me just show you what this looks like. And again, this is wet still. You saw me kind of manipulating the wet clay, and we're painting right over it. Can you see like the pretty shimmer that it gives? And it's just a slightest off-white. Not much different than the clay. So I don't need to go all the way to the edge and mess up the black stamps. You're not going to see that down there. So it makes my life a little easier. All right, so that's that. I'll continue doing that after. All right, put that in water so we don't ruin our brush. Then our letters. Let's paint these. I'm going to mix a pink. Let's put this up here. Hopefully it doesn't fall. Oh, gotta press it down somewhere. Always check. while you can, you know, check that everything is down. I can, if I want, like I said with the trim, I can go around and put a little bead of caulk so you don't have any, like, can you see like there's a little bit of a gap under the head here? Because I added the clay there. All right, it's a little bulky, but it's an art piece, it's not furniture. So I'm not bothered that it's not totally flat on the surface. And then when I glued it down, you want to press it inward, 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 inward. I forgot to talk about that on the live because we ran out of time, always. So you're pressing it inward, just like we did with this. This we don't really need to press because it's thin, but because we have more substance to this mold, we're pressing it in all directions inward when we glued it on, okay? So let's make a pink. I'm gonna use some of that oyster because I want it to be pearly. We're going to, here's a stir stick, okay. We're using their cap here still for our little palette. Actually, that's probably a bit too much because we're not gonna need a lot. Okay. We're gonna take a bit of this moonstone. It doesn't have to be a bright white. This will be kind of a muted pink. Oops. I'm new to the FIFO bottles. So I tried storing it upside down, but it was leaking. Maybe it's not the best quality. But that's okay. All right, and now we're gonna take a little bit of this, like I said. Give it some pearl. And then we'll mix it up. All right. Hopefully that's enough pearl in there to get done what we need to get done. We're going to take this fine brush. We can start with the edges. What you'll find is these will need a second coat. The paint doesn't cover as well on the resin, but that's okay. We love it anyways. Okay, I'm just trying to get right on the edge. I'm pinching it together and I want to make sure I get it unpinched when I set it down because it's still soft. It's still setting up. Just getting it down to the edges is the most important part. I can always paint the tops. Okay, let's separate this a little bit. There. There's one coat. And we'll do another, right? So you can see, get the edges. If we have to, we can take an X-Acto knife or whatever and clean up these edges since I was in a rush, like I said. And we had a little overage. So like here, there's a little bit there. I just took it off with my fingertip. Okay. There's the E. And that's it. We'll keep going. So I've just started using a little bit of the Paint Couture Black Chiffon Glaze, and it's put on even with a very watery brush. I don't want it to be dark, and if it gets too dark, I'm going to pat it with this other soft brush. If you were working on a bigger surface, you'd be using bigger brushes and maybe a chip brush to soften. But since it's such a small area, see the difference? Some parts can be a little bit dark, but I don't want the whole thing to be like black and white, you know what I mean? This has to somewhat set off from the black and white background, if that makes any sense. I'm trying to make sense here. Okay, so that's that. Easy, right? Love working with glaze. If you're manipulating it with wet rag, wet brushes and all that, it'll stay active longer. When you start working with dry products, a dry rag, a dry paper towel, dry brush to pat it, it will start setting it up. Glaze is meant to give you more open time so you can do this sort of thing, but especially the products, you know, working with the furniture paint and craft paint industry, the glaze does dry a little bit quicker. All right, so that's that. All right, I'm gonna rinse this off. We could come off onto the background a little bit. I'm not sure I'm going to. Well, you know what? Let's just try it. See how we like it. You don't know until you try, right? So what I'm gonna do, actually we'll take this small brush. No, not that small brush, this small brush. Okay, it's just a little flathead. And we're just gonna take like a little bit on the tip. Remember, this other area is sealed in, the background is all sealed in a flat, the Dixie Belle Clear Coat flat. I ended up going back over, I don't have Dixie Belle in gloss yet, it's going to be coming, so I ended up going over the Cherub in a gloss. I just felt like it wasn't sealed enough for me to start working with the glaze, that I might activate the clay. So it's not really noticeable doing this, but visually it does help pop it from the background, and we don't have to go all the way around. Okay, we can just keep it on the bottom side like it's a shadow. If I want to thin some of it out, let's say that's too straight of a line there, we just add a little bit of water and thin it out. Okay, it's not rocket science. That's what's fun about working with glaze. You get time to play, especially if you have at least like a satin finish, but since we're working quick, this flat finish should be fine. All right, so, and I can always go and add more. Just trying to give you a quick run through on this process. And we're going to do the opposite color for the trim. Okay, let me just pat that out some more. All right, done with the black, moving on. I'm gonna get the oyster once again. I'm just gonna take some on my finger and rub it over some of the details. Sometimes, you know, these paints grab on to the glaze, and I want her to be as shiny, pearly on the parts as possible. A lot of times when you're antiquing a piece, you know, it's good that the glaze kind of, you know, makes all the colors a little more subtle and more muted. But in her case, I want the details to stand out, but I really love this pearl. So I don't want to lose the pearl with the black glaze sitting on there. And just kind of rubbing it over the highlights. I think that should be good. Let me wipe my finger now. And let's work on this molding. Again, working with the pearl. Let's put some into the cap so we're not messing up the paint itself. Okay, that should be enough. We can always add more, but it's harder to take it out if it was too much, right? It's kind of like telling your kids at the dinner table, you can always have more. So, all right, so here's my paint, here's my palette I was talking about, okay? And we're gonna, again, work with this pretty wet. Let's move the camera up a little bit. This does have a coat of flat on it, so hopefully this will hold up for us, and let's just see what happens. If not, I'll have to go over it in a satin. Okay. And I'm just gonna pat, because I'm afraid, you know, with all the work that we've done to this today, and I kept adding paint, that we could be activating it. So we're gonna work wet, we're gonna work dabby dabby instead of wipey wipey. Okay. And work quick. And I'm trying to keep just to this trim, which really, you know, makes life fun, doesn't it? And again, we can go back and add more, but I'd rather a more subtle look to start, and we can go and add more. And if, you know, I'm going to continue doing this, but you get the idea, right? You see how that's starting to pop? And again, because I don't want to over manipulate everything here, I will go back over. I will get my black paint, okay, when I've done all this sort of whitewashing. Oh no. And we will just touch over the tops with the black, and then we can seal it again. So that kind of gives it a liming effect, but it's still pretty subtle. So that was it. We did our lives, and we've gotten to the point where we've sealed and we're ready to put hangers on here. I've just got to do a little dusting is all, because, you know, it sits on this table and we get clay bits on it, but yeah, you get the point, right? I know it's backwards, but look how beautiful the details are. The angel, I mean, you can't even, and it was easy to do. You get this artwork and it's easy for you to do. This, remember we did the wash of the oyster on here? I didn't do any fill, okay? There's no caulking on here. This is just, you press it in and press it in and press it in until all the stretch that you do, putting the molds on, doesn't affect anything, okay? The cracks, I did see there's one right here, okay, in between the flowers. You can't even see it, so we're not gonna even deal with it, okay? And I think one right there, okay? Right between the flowers. You're never gonna see that. Even if you did, a little crack here or there in something that's like this is not gonna be a big deal, and the wash of the metallic would have sat in there anyways. Or if you were doing a glaze, it would have sat in there. So that's how this all works. We've got one coat, top coat on everything. We ended up doing this. I had it pretty shiny and I brought it down a little bit in the second top coat. I brought it down to a satin. This is done in a satin, but the rest is a flat. And then on the flat, I took, this is also satin, but the rest of the flats I ended up going over with a wax. Because I was kind of in a rush. I was hoping to bring it to our other location, and I didn't have time for top coat to dry, and then I never ended up doing it, but I said, you know what, I wanted to use up the wax anyway. So that's how I came to that decision, if you were wondering. I don't even know if you were wondering. So let's get to the next step here. Okay. We want to get these hangers on. I'm going to use these eye rings, okay, eye screws. What do they technically call them? Screw eyes. I had it backwards. Screw eyes. I call them eye screws. And a lot of times there's one that has the hook, and you would put this on one end, and the hook would go in the other, and that's how that works. I have measured. I've decided just to kind of go 3 inches in, 3 inches in. Okay. You could do a single hanger in the center and just have a loop, but you know, I don't like that. I'd rather have, I'm going to have a ribbon connecting the two, and I want it to be a fairly big ribbon. So I'm hoping that's why these are not the most decorative hooks, but they're a little bit bigger than the ones I normally use, to hopefully we can get, I'm hoping to get this ribbon in. Okay, that's the plan. We shall see. Now, when you're picking, I want to go ahead and I'm going to pre-drill, because the clay, I don't want it to crackle up when we're, normally you can just, in the wood, take the eye screw and just boom, boom, and just with a little pressure downward, start screwing it in, okay? A lot of times I'll hold it with one hand here like this and start pressing down and turning. I don't want I don't know if the clay will crumble, but for one thing, we can show you how to pre-drill, and for another, let's just be safe. So I've picked a drill bit without knowing the size. It says a number 10. I'm sure there's a way to figure out an actual size. I've picked out a drill bit that is about the same size, a hair smaller than the screw. A lot of times, if you go at eye length, eye level, and set them on a surface, you can see if this is raising above the teeth, then you want to get one smaller, your drill bit, okay? You want to make sure that your teeth extend past the bit. And we're not going to drill all the way anyways. We're just going to give it a start through the clay. I'm not so worried about it being exact. You know, this looks like it's actually pretty close to the size of the screw. I would actually ideally go a hair smaller, but I just want to get through the clay in this. Anytime, you know, as long as you're going to have more wood for the teeth of the screws to bite into, to grab, you can have it the same size. All right, so I've got it in my marked spot. I'm pretty center, and we're just going to hold this still. I'm putting a little pressure downward. You don't need to go fast because that's the clay. And a little bit into the wood. Okay. Okay. You can't see that, but that's done. Right here. And I just marked it with, I'll show you, a watercolor pencil. So whenever you're doing markings on your projects and they're already done, I really like the watercolor pencils, because if you get any marks that you need to get off, you don't have to worry about the pencil or the pen staining your paints and then showing up forever. These, you wipe them off. Okay, it's watercolor. If I were to wipe that down with water, it just disappears, okay? All right, so now we have that pre-drilled. That was super easy. And we just take our little eyelet screw, and again, with that little bit of pressure, because we didn't go down very far, I want the screw to grab the wood. Once it grabs, it's super easy to do this. You just turn and turn. If you find like you have arthritis or something, you could take like a screwdriver and use it to pry it. Okay, that's easy, right? And we'll go down a little more. Let's grab one more. And again, these you get at the hardware store. Let's screw this in. Easy peasy. Oh, we got more messes we'll have to clean up. Just wipe it down after. Now, let's see if we can't, what did I do with my ribbon? I just had, there it is. Okay, I'm just blind as all. In my little laboratory, my little creative laboratory here. All right. I'm not gonna make a bow, I don't think. There's different ways we could do this. We could just do a little knot here and a little knot here. I guess we could just stick with that. Okay, a knot on each end, okay, and then you have like so, right? And then we could just do another little faux bow around the top. That could easily work. I was hoping though to have the bow on top, but then you're gonna hide, you know, if we went like this and then made a bow, not a bow, but a knot, okay, up on the top, like so, okay. We could do that. So we're just going to feed this through the eyelet. Just do a knot. Make sure we have enough to have a little overhang in our knot. And I think that's what we're gonna do. Do I like that? Actually, I don't know if I like that. See how I'm looking at this part here? I don't, that visually bothers me. So we're not gonna do that. Okay. That's why I didn't cut it. I hate to waste. So we're gonna do a little bow, a little knot here. And a little knot here. You have to have, what I have found with these gallery blanks, because there's a thickness to them, is you have to have enough of a hang for it to be able to hang flat on the wall. If you try to do it like this, it doesn't give enough play and it ends up kind of kicking up off the wall a little bit. So you do have to give, when you're doing this kind of a hanger, you have to give it some play. All right, let's try that. All right, give ourselves a little room for a knot. Give it a cut. Then I was thinking, now that I cut it, I could have done a knot here, a knot up here, but no. We are committed to this now. We could also hit these with like a little glue gun. Which is probably what I'll do. I'll just hit like a little glue in here. after, because I'm going to do another little bow on the other side, just so we have, you don't really see a lot of that hanger. Okay, and we could make this a knot, but I find, especially when you're using these bigger bows, they get to be a little clunky looking. Okay, just a simple single knot. We're going to put a little glue into the knot so it doesn't come apart. And then we're going to add just faux ones on this side. Sure. Yeah, I think that's good. One more for the other side. Then what you want to do when you're all said and done is push out some of this wire and trim it so that it doesn't end up poking through. But we're going to use it to make it like a little needle right now. Bows are all fine and dandy, but just this simple knots with the little tails, you know, the little ends coming out is just a nice look. It's simple. And we've hid some of that. And we can trim these as long or as small as we want. Right? Easy peasy. I hope you liked what you saw. I hope I inspired you to do something with these wood gallery blanks with the Lady Shallot stamp, with the Cherub, classical Cherub's mold. I can't even. I'm going to be sad to see them go. But make sure, you know, you can check us out if you're on Cape. Come check us out in our store. We're at the far west end of Main Street in Hyannis on Cape Cod. And you can always check out online as well. All our products, our Dixie Belle paints, are all available online and in store. All right, we appreciate you watching. If you liked what you saw, please share. We'd appreciate that. It helps out a small business. And any comments you have, make sure you put it down below, and I am really good about getting back to you. All right, thanks so much. I really appreciate you watching. Stay well. Bye-bye.